Let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Peter Chin-Hong. He specializes in infectious diseases at the University of California, San Francisco. Thanks again for joining us. How's J&J's vaccine different in terms of its development? We heard from John about some of the differences in how it's going to be administered, one shot versus two, refrigeration. But what about how it's different from Pfizer and Moderna in the development?
Yeah, so it's different, Roee, in terms of this being an adenovirus vector vaccine. So what it means is that instead of encasing the genetic message or mRNA in a fatty bubble, you're using a spaceship to bring it to the cells of the body to make spike proteins. And that spaceship happens to be an inactivated virus that causes a common cold, adenovirus. So that's the way it differs. But in the end result, you're still making these spike proteins that the body makes antibodies towards. Because there's no fatty bubble, many people believe that there will not be any severe allergic reactions that were seen in the in the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines.
Does that make them less able to adapt to the variants like Pfizer and Moderna can, based on what we've been hearing from the NIH, for example, about changes, boosters, et cetera?
That's a possibility. It may be a little less agile in terms of making a new booster. In the mRNA vaccines, you essentially just cut and paste the message for the new spike protein or the new code, and it's very easy to manufacture. These are a little bit more traditional vaccines, but still not impossible to do. So the other big point about this vaccine is that, as said in the earlier report, it has been studied in the countries where there's scary variants circulating, Brazil and South Africa, and the fact that it's shown to be efficacious in a clinical trial, is actually very reassuring.
And it's remarkable, something like 75 to 80% efficacy with Johnson & Johnson, not quite the 95% that we're seeing with the mRNAs, but still significant compared to the influenza vaccines. Pfizer has said it's going to start trials on children ages, I believe, 5 and up. It'll be a while before there are results. Do you think school reopenings should be tied to these studies and the preliminary results at least?
Definitely not. We know that kids, particularly under 12, have a very, very low chance of both acquiring and transmitting COVID. In fact, in the US CDC report recently published a few weeks ago, only 2% of transmissions were ascribed to kids under 9. So again, it's really the teachers that need to be prioritized and not the children.
The CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, says that we're seeing the effects of the new variant spreading here in the U.S. What do you think we can learn from that? And should we be, in the medical community and the general population, reacting any differently than what we're already doing now?
I think it's really the advice of whatever we're doing now, exclamation point. Our regular protections still work. So I think it just means that the only variable mainly is human behavior. We know what to do in terms of the science. We have vaccines. We continue to need to roll them out very expeditiously. And now with J&J and boosting of production from Pfizer and Moderna, we can expect to have at least many millions of doses by July, 600 million for Pfizer and Moderna, 100 million for J&J. And hopefully with AstraZeneca and Novavax, much of the U.S. population could be vaccinated by summer.
We've been hearing from emergency room physicians that they're actually seeing a drop in COVID cases as a disease and more cases related to mental health. How concerning is that?
It's very, very concerning. So that's the part, I think that's the big unknown for me. It's the long haulers, it's the repercussions, it's the ripple effects from COVID. Even if you don't get sick to go to the ICU, we know that in a recent study, 33% of people have these long hauler syndromes, which are characterized by fatigue, brain fog, alterations in taste and smell. We don't know how long they will last, but that number is pretty striking. So the take-home point, coming back to your earlier question about the variants, is don't get COVID, use your protection, because if you get it, even if you don't go to the hospital, it can have a little bit of a long-term effects that could impact your life.
Dr. Peter Chin-Hong from UCSF, thanks as always.